There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from having swallowed yourself for too long. A silence shaped like apology, apologizing for existing too loudly, for laughing when it felt like too much, for needing what nobody knew how to hold. This silence, it becomes a room. You start decorating it. You hang memories on the walls and call it home. You convince yourself that this room of echoes is where you belong. But it's not. It never was. Somewhere along the line, someone told you you weren't enough, or too much, or the wrong kind of fire. And like a spell, you believed it, not because it was true, but because your innocence needed something to blame, because your soul would rather carry shame than abandon the ones who taught you how to feel unworthy. But here's the thing they never told you. Self-worth is not given. It is remembered, reclaimed, resurrected from the ashes of your silence. You are not broken. You are buried treasure in the ache you feel. It's your soul digging, because gold never loses value, only visibility. You're not too late, not too far gone, not too dim to be seen. You are the very thing you were waiting for. The key, the home, the voice that says, you never needed to shrink to be loved. Now, let's begin the return. There's a kind of inheritance we don't talk about, not the kind made of heirlooms or names carved into stone, but the kind sown into silence, the kind passed down in looks of disappointment, in the weight of unmet expectations, in the invisible rules that said, be small, be soft, be grateful for scraps. Many of us grew up feeding ourselves with what little affection we could gather, a glance, a nod, a moment of attention mistaken for love. So we became expert alchemists, turning crumbs into feast. And every time someone withheld warmth, we told ourselves we were the reason the light didn't come. And this is how we learned to question our worth, not in moments of chaos, but in the stillness after, in the silence that follows a need unmet, in the look that says you're too much, or worse, not enough to matter. But self-worth doesn't die. It retreats. It goes underground like sacred seeds waiting for rain, because a soul can't forget its divine weight. It only learns to fear the sunlight when it's been scorched by rejection, disguised as love. And so you became the caretaker of everyone else's comfort. You learned to dim, to bend, to disappear, so they could shine, not out of weakness, but out of love. And that is the most tragic kind of forgetting, when the brightest ones abandon their glow so that others don't feel the sting of their own shadows. But this is the reckoning, the return of the exiled self. The day you stop mistaking scarcity for safety, because you were never too much. You were just more than they had space to hold. And now, finally, it's your own arms you must return to. Some of the deepest wounds don't bleed, they bind. They sign your name to invisible contracts. Agreements made not with logic, but with longing. When you were small, you thought, if I'm good enough, they'll stay. If I don't complain, they'll love me. If I give everything, maybe this time, I'll be chosen. And so you gave, not from abundance, but from hunger. You shaped yourself into what they needed, thinking it would finally make you enough to be kept. You didn't realize that every time you abandoned yourself to be loved, you were reinforcing the lie that your worth was negotiable. These contracts are cunning. They sound like humility. They look like generosity, but they taste like erasure. You kept showing up for people who never saw the cost, because somewhere deep down, you were trying to buy back the love that was never safe to begin with. And so the self-worth shrank quietly, not because it wasn't there, but because it was drowning under all the versions of you that were built for survival. You became so many things for so many people that you forgot the shape of your own soul. You forgot that love isn't earned, it's recognized. But now you're awakening. Now you're standing at the altar of your own becoming, and you're holding those old contracts in your hands, not with anger, but with clarity, not to curse the past, but to rewrite the terms, because your worth is not up for negotiation, not anymore. There is a kind of power in tearing up what no longer fits, in saying, I release you. I release the bargain. I return to my original value. This is not rebellion. This is resurrection. The unbinding of a soul from the lie that it had to earn what it always was. Whole, worthy, wanted, even in the silence, especially there. There's a voice inside you that remembers, not in words, but in frequency. It's the sound you made before the world told you who to be. The sound of your joy when it was unfiltered. The rawness of your truth before you learned to dilute it. It's still there, buried beneath the ash of every time you silenced yourself to be loved. You buried her, didn't you? That wild one, the one who danced before knowing shame, who said what she meant without flinching, who felt her feelings fully, without apology. She wasn't broken. She was just exiled because the world couldn't hold her wholeness. And so you split. A part of you stayed visible, the polite, pleasing, careful self. The other part? She went underground, waiting, watching, weeping sometimes when you thought it was about something else. But it wasn't about the people or the situations. It was about her, calling from within, asking to be remembered. Every time you said yes when you meant no, she grieved. Every time you laughed when you wanted to cry, she dimmed. Every time you made yourself palatable, she faded a little more, until one day you forgot what she sounded like. But she never forgot you. She has been whispering through your sadness, your tiredness, your longing. This voice is your compass, not the one shaped by the world, but the one anchored in soul. She doesn't want revenge. She wants reunion, not to destroy what you built, but to rebuild it around truth, because a self-reclaimed is a self-reborn. And when you speak from her again, the world will have no choice but to listen. The return of your voice is the return of your worth. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stop muting the most sacred parts of you. She's not gone. She's rising. And this time, you will not silence her for anyone. There is a child inside you still sitting by the window, not for someone specific, but for a feeling that never came. A feeling of being seen without performance, held without having to earn it, loved in the raw, imperfect, messy truth of her being. She waited and waited until the waiting became her identity. This child didn't want much, only everything. To be held when she cried instead of told to be strong, to be celebrated in her joy, not shushed for being too loud, to be told she was magic without having to prove it, to be chosen, not tolerated. But when those moments didn't come, she made sense of it the only way a child can. It must be me. I must be broken, unlovable, too much. And with that, the first fracture formed, not in her spirit, but in her belief. And she began the quiet, lifelong work of becoming acceptable. She wore masks that smiled while her heart ached. She achieved so she'd be valued. She disappeared so she wouldn't be a burden. And the tragedy is not that she changed. It's that nobody noticed what it cost her. that she became palatable to be kept, and in the process forgot the taste of her own truth. But she's still there, still waiting, not for someone else to arrive, but for you, to kneel beside her, not as the adult who knows better, but as the soul who remembers. To say the words no one ever did. You were always worthy, even then, especially then. This is the return, the sacred homecoming of your own innocence. You are not weak for still aching. You are holy for still feeling. And this child, she doesn't need fixing. She needs your arms around her. Finally, the shadow doesn't hate you. It protects you ferociously. But in the language of the unconscious, protection often looks like sabotage, not because your soul is broken, but because it would rather keep you in the familiar prison than risk freedom in a world that once wounded you. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your contract keeper. It remembers the first time you were left behind, so it sabotages love before it can leave you. It remembers the sting of being invisible, so it keeps you loud, performing, proven, just to be seen. You've judged her, called her lazy, jealous, dramatic. But what if she's none of that? What if she's the version of you that carried all the pain you weren't allowed to feel? The part of you that said, if no one will protect me, then I'll become the armor. Not elegant, not polished, but utterly loyal. Every time you've repeated a cycle, it wasn't weakness. It was your shadow saying, look, this wound is still open. She doesn't want attention. She wants integration, to be invited back into your arms, not as something to fix, but as the fiercest proof that you survived what once tried to erase you. Your shadow isn't here to shame you. She's your map. She carries the pattern you came here to break, the wound you were destined to transmute into wisdom. She is the guardian of your becoming, but only if you stop running and finally turn to face her. So take her hand, ask her what she's trying to protect. Let her scream, let her shake, let her weep. And when she's done, tell her she doesn't have to do it alone anymore. That love is here now, and it's you. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they are. And when you base your worth on their vision, you begin to distort the sacred architecture of your soul to fit the confines of someone else's broken lens. You start mistaking rejection for truth, and it's not. Every person who couldn't love you was a mirror, but not of your value, of your wounds. They mirrored back your unworthiness because that's what you still carried. And in your longing to be chosen, you chose those who mirrored your pain, because the nervous system prefers familiarity over freedom. You called it chemistry. You called it fate. But it was repetition, a reenactment of the first time you felt not enough, hoping this time the story would end differently, that this one would stay, that this one would finally see you. But no one can offer you what you refuse to give yourself. And love, real love, begins where performance ends. When you stop trying to be the version of you they might keep and start embodying the truth of who you actually are, even if it means losing those who only loved your mask. Especially then. You're not too much. You are just too real for those still hiding from themselves. Your light wasn't rejected because it was wrong. It was rejected because it exposed what others couldn't yet face. But your worth is not diminished by someone else's blindness. It is eternal, inherent, untouched. So bless the mirrors that broke you. They showed you where to heal. And now let them go, not with resentment, but with reverence. Because your new reflection begins not in their eyes, but in your own. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you stop waiting, not because hope has died, but because something deeper has awakened, a knowing that no one is coming in the way you once dreamed. And strangely, that is not sorrow, it is power. You begin to realize that everything you ever wanted someone to say to you, you can say now. That every time you ached for comfort, you can be the one who wraps yourself in warmth. You become mother, father, witness, healer. Not in pretense, but in presence. This is not self-help. This is sacred reclamation, the kind where you look in the mirror and whisper, "I'm not leaving you again." The kind where you hold your own hand through the storm and your soul sighs in relief. Finally, she's here. You stop seeking approval like water. Because you've dug your own well, you stop begging for validation from people who can't see themselves. Because you've opened your own eyes, you stop chasing the ones who ghosted your worth. Because you've resurrected it, and it's not that the ache disappears, but now it's met. It has a home, a witness, a voice that says, "I see you, I love you, I will never abandon you again." This is reparenting, not fixing, not forcing, but filling the absence with your own sacred presence. This is how worth returns. Not through external applause, but through the quiet ritual of showing up for yourself, consistently, fiercely, gently. You don't need to be saved. You only need to be stayed with. There is a version of you that doesn't chase. She doesn't prove. She doesn't perform. She walks into rooms and her presence speaks before her mouth does. She doesn't need to be chosen because she already chose herself. That version, she's not a fantasy. She's your origin. She's not louder, she's clearer, not harder, more whole. She carries her scars like scripture, not to show she's suffered, but to remind herself, "I healed, I returned, I remembered who I am." And no one can take that from her. This sovereign self doesn't mistake loneliness for lack. She knows her own company is sacred. She is no longer flattered by breadcrumbs or intimidated by silence. She blesses those who leave because she knows the ones who cannot meet her depth were never meant to stay. The sovereign is not heartless. She's anchored. She doesn't lash out. She doesn't beg. She simply no longer abandons herself to belong. Because when you know your worth, you don't settle. You magnetize. You don't shrink. You expand. And yes, this version of you has cost you. You had to shed layers of people-pleasing, burn old identities, break ancestral patterns. But what you gained was your soul in full bloom. You are not here to audition for love. You are the love. You are not a question mark. You are a declaration. And now, finally, you walk like someone who remembers, "I was never missing. I was simply waiting to be claimed." You've spent so long searching for signs, for proof, for someone to reflect back the worth you forgot. But now you see, the search was never about finding something new. It was about removing the veils. Veils made of conditioning, of inherited silence, of ancestral shame that was never yours to carry. You were never broken. You were buried under layers of survival, overfunctioning, pleasing, pretending. But the excavation is complete. Now the gold shines through. You've touched your shadow and didn't flinch. You've held your inner child without shame. You've burned old contracts and made vows to your own heart. You've looked in mirrors and named the truth. You've mothered yourself back to wholeness. And in doing so, you've remembered what was never lost, only hidden. You are not waiting anymore. You are walking. You are not asking for permission. You are building temples in your own name. You are not looking for love in scarcity. You are love in motion, sacred, whole, undeniable. And now you speak differently. You move differently. Not from arrogance, but from alignment. Not from ego, but from essence. Because once you know your worth, you become immovable in the best way. This is not the end. This is the integration. The place where your worth is no longer a theory, but a practice, a presence, a prayer. And every breath you take now says it clearly. I am the answer I was waiting for. There is a ceremony happening inside you now, unseen but undeniable. A sacred crowning where every version of you that once begged to be enough now gathers around you in silence, watching as you place your own hands on your heart, your head, your soul. You are not becoming, you are unveiling, peeling back the layers, the masks, the myths. You are not here to be understood by all. You are here to be true to yourself, even if only a few can feel it, especially then. The ache, the longing, the grief, they weren't in vain. They were the doorway. They were what cracked you open so your light could spill through the wounds, not to be wasted, but to become wisdom. And now you stand at the center of your own altar, no longer waiting to be named. You name yourself. You declare, I am the return. I am the voice. I am the worth I once searched for. The world doesn't give you this title. You claim it through breath, through boundary, through becoming. So let this be the final forgetting. The forgetting of all that ever made you feel small. Let it fall like ash. Let it drift like memory that no longer defines you. And from that silence, let something holy rise. Your unapologetic, untamed, undeniable presence. You were never meant to be found in someone else's eyes. You were meant to be remembered in your own. And now that you have walked forward, not to seek worth, but to carry it like fire in your bones, not loud, but eternal.